Here we're going to be listening to what D'Angelo's only daughter has to say about his death and the industry and how his death has affected her and her emotional strained relationship that she had with the great icon, D'Angelo.
After years of silence surrounding one of music's most private legends, a voice has finally stepped into the spotlight. And it's coming from someone who knows D'Angelo better than anyone else ever could. Armani Archer, the daughter the world barely knew existed, is speaking out. And what she's revealing about her father's hidden life, his struggles, and his legacy has fans stunned. From unspoken truths about fame to deep family pain, this isn't just another celebrity story. It's a revelation that could change everything you thought you knew about D'Angelo. But wait until you hear the part that the industry never wanted to come out. For decades, D'Angelo has been one of music's most mysterious figures. Known for his soulful sound, intense privacy, and long disappearances from the public eye, he built a career defined as much by his silence as by his genius. Fans have always wondered what really goes on behind the curtain of his life, what shaped his struggles, his heartbreaks, and his brilliance. But now, for the first time, someone from within his own family is breaking that silence. Her name is Armani Archer, D'Angelo's daughter. For years, her existence was barely discussed publicly. She grew up in the background of her father's fame, watching from the shadows as the world praised his music, but
She
never
looks like
truly
Aaliyah.
understood the man behind it. And now, as she steps forward to speak her truth, people are realizing that her story might hold the key to understanding D'Angelo's complex legacy. In this video, we're going to explore who Armani Archer really is, not just as D'Angelo's daughter, but as a woman carving out her own identity in a world that only knows her father's name. We'll uncover what she's revealed about her life growing up, the emotional distance between her and her father, and how fame, pain, and legacy collide in ways that few could imagine. You won't believe what Armani has shared about the real cost of fame, the family secrets that shaped her childhood, and the truths she says the industry tried to bury. Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll see D'Angelo and his story in a completely different light. Now let's begin with the first part of this journey, how Armani Archer came to be known, and what her early life reveals about the hidden world behind D'Angelo's fame. For years, very few people even knew that D'Angelo had a daughter. While the world was mesmerized by his voice, his artistry, and his reclusive nature, the story of Armani Archer remained tucked away, far from the spotlight. Born to one of the most enigmatic artists of the modern era, Armani's childhood was anything but ordinary. Yet it wasn't filled with the glamour or privilege that people might expect from the daughter of a music icon. Instead, her life was shaped by silence, distance, and a complex family dynamic that few ever understood. Those who have followed D'Angelo's journey know that he has always been intensely private. Even at the height of his success in the late 1990s and early 2000s, he refused interviews, shunned fame, and withdrew from public life for years at a time. Behind the scenes, he was battling personal demons, from the pressures of the music industry to the weight of expectation and the lure of self-destruction. During those years, while fans were waiting for new music, Armani was growing up in the background, witnessing a father who was both a legend and a mystery. Armani's early years were spent mostly out of the public eye. Sources close to the family say she lived a relatively normal life, thanks to her mother's efforts to shield her from the chaos of fame. Still, it was impossible to completely escape the shadow of being D'Angelo's daughter. Even at a young age, she knew her father wasn't just another musician, he was a cultural phenomenon. But what she also knew, perhaps better than anyone else, was the cost that came with that status. Friends of the family have described Armani as curious and introspective, much like her father. But there was always a quiet sadness about her, the kind that comes from growing up with unanswered questions. While D'Angelo was grappling with fame and battling personal struggles, Armani was learning what it meant to live without the full presence of a father. She would later reveal that there were long stretches of time when communication was limited, and that the distance between them wasn't just physical, it
How do we pay for all this?
emotional. Despite that, Armani has never spoken with bitterness. Instead, her tone when she speaks about her father is one of empathy and understanding. She acknowledges his struggles and recognizes that fame, for him, was never a blessing but a burden. In a rare moment of vulnerability, she reportedly said that she believes her father's greatest challenge wasn't music, but finding peace within himself. As she grew older, Armani began to see the duality of her life more clearly. On one hand, she had a father whose art touched millions and influenced an entire generation of musicians. On the other, she had a man she barely knew, someone she loved deeply but understood very little about. That emotional tug-of-war became the defining theme of her early years. Even as a young adult, Armani stayed out of the limelight. She rarely posted about her father, never exploited her connection to his fame, and seemed determined to create her own path. But what people didn't know was that she had been quietly collecting her thoughts, her experiences, her pain, and her perspective on what it truly means to be the child of a legend who never wanted the spotlight. It wasn't until recently that Armani decided to step forward and share her truth. And when she did, the world began to listen. Because for the first time, someone was speaking from inside D'Angelo's world. Not as a critic, not as a fan, but as a daughter who lived it. But before we get to her powerful words and what she revealed about her father's struggles, it's important to understand what drove her to finally break her silence. And why now, after years of protecting her privacy, she chose to speak. For years, Armani Archer remained silent, watching the world speak about her father, while she quietly lived her life outside of the spotlight. But as she grew older, the weight of silence began to press harder. Everywhere she turned, D'Angelo's name carried stories of genius, heartbreak, addiction, and mystery. To the public, he was a legend. To Armani, he was a ghost, a father she loved but could never quite reach. And after years of holding back, that silence finally became too heavy to carry. Those close to Armani describe her decision to speak out as something that built up slowly, not from anger, but from a need for clarity and peace. For most of her life, she'd watched her father be misunderstood by the media. They called him reclusive, troubled, even a fallen star. But Armani knew there was more to the story. She had seen the man behind the myth, the quiet, emotional soul who carried deep pain beneath his talent. She wanted the world to see that version of her father, the one hidden behind the headlines and rumors. Still, it wasn't just about defending him. It was also about reclaiming her own identity. Imagine growing up with a name that instantly connects you to greatness, but also to tragedy. No matter where she went or what she pursued, Armani was always seen as D'Angelo's daughter. That label followed her through school, into her young adulthood, and even into her career. And while she respected her father's legacy, she also wanted to be seen for who she was, her own person, with her own story to tell. The turning point came when she began receiving messages online, from fans, from bloggers, even from strangers, asking her about her father. Some were kind, some invasive, and others cruel. The rumors about D'Angelo's personal life, his mental health, and his long absences were spreading again. People wanted answers, and they assumed Armani had them. For a long time, she ignored the noise. But one particular message changed everything. It came from a fan who wrote that D'Angelo abandoned his daughter for fame, and that comment hit deep. That accusation, though based on speculation, stirred something in Armani. She had lived that reality, the absence, the confusion, the emotional distance. But she also knew that her father's absence wasn't about neglect or lack of love. It was about a man fighting his own demons in an industry that consumes the soul. And she realized that if she didn't speak, others would continue to define her story for her. That was the moment she decided to step forward. Her first public comments came during an intimate online interview. There were no flashing lights, no scripted lines, just raw honesty. Armani spoke with quiet strength, describing her childhood not as a tragedy, but as a journey of understanding. She explained that her father's struggles weren't the result of arrogance or fame gone wrong, but of deep emotional wounds that the world never allowed him to heal. "My father loved deeply," she said, "but the world loved him in a way that hurt him." That single sentence spread across social media like wildfire. Fans who had once judged D'Angelo began to pause. For the first time, they were hearing from someone who wasn't speculating, someone who had lived through it. Armani wasn't defending her father blindly. She was offering context, humanizing a man who had been turned into a myth.
The Thanksgiving turkey sub is